Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about Universal Credit and PIP. I know they can be really daunting, scary, overwhelming, everything like that, and as someone who has done it, I thought I would talk you through how it works, my opinions of it, how it went for me, pros and cons, things like that. So you have more of an idea of what you're getting yourself into, because neither of them are easy. So when you're on regular Universal Credit, you are expected to be looking for work. But if you have been categorized as reduced capacity for work, then you don't have to be actively looking for a job. This is a significant difference between the regular Universal Credit, because you don't have to be looking for a job, you don't have to have fortnightly meetings, and you can claim some extra money to help with your living expenses. However, you have to keep in mind that all Universal Credit is means tested. This means that if you have a well-paying job or a lot of money in savings, you're not eligible for Universal Credit, whereas PIP, on the other hand, is not means tested, which means as long as you meet the criteria, you can be awarded PIP, no matter the rest of your financial situation. So PIP is a payment which is supposed to offset some of the costs of being disabled. Within PIP, there are two sections, the daily living section and the mobility section. You can be eligible for both, in which case you would get a higher amount of money, or just one of them, depending on your situation. So these two benefits in the UK are very significant assistance for disabled people. Though you don't have to identify as disabled in order to get these things, you can identify as chronically ill or mentally ill, etc. It's a case of whether your life is made significantly more difficult than the average person's because of an illness, and specifically in the categories that they're looking at. So let's talk about the processes of applying for Universal Credit, reduced work capacity, and PIP. PIP has an incredibly bad reputation of being impossible to apply for, impossible to get, that the assessors are horrible and don't want you to get what you deserve, all of this stuff. And you hear some really terrible stories about people having really bad experiences. And unfortunately, I can't tell you these things aren't true or won't happen, but I can tell you what happened for me. So the first thing that happened was you have to call them and ask for a form. So first stumble, if you're going to struggle. So first stumbling block, if you struggle to talk on the phone for any reason, that might be a difficulty for you. But I had to request a form, which they then sent to my house. While on the phone, they asked me some questions about my disability to decide whether I was eligible to get the form that would decide whether I would get the PIP. It's a big old faff. Basically, everything about this system is a faff, and they are actively trying to make it difficult so that people who don't need it don't apply for it. But it actively alienates people who are unwell and disabled, etc. because it's tricky, it's hard, it's a faffy process. Unfortunately, it's been made a difficult process on purpose, which is really annoying, and I think one of the problems with the whole system and the situation and how we treat disabled people and lots of groups as well, but it's how it is at the moment. So they ask you some redundant questions about your situation in order to decide whether they're going to send you the form. So they send you this big old chunk of form. You have 3 weeks to fill it in and send it back, or you have to do this extra bit explaining why you couldn't do it in time. Does anyone else feel like they're just like hitting a dead horse? Like, you're too unwell to fill this form in? Well, fill in extra stuff. It's a very frustrating process, I won't lie. So the form itself is very long. The answers are in-depth, long sentences, paragraphs of words. They're not single answer questions, they're not yes or no's, they're full on describe your life. And they really focus on everything bad about your life. They want you to go into significant detail about your troubles, what makes your life hard, everything that maybe on a daily basis you don't think too hard about. That in a positive day, you don't dwell on the absolute worst stuff that is happening to you and has happened to you and continues to happen to you. You know, try not to not think about it, but just to not delve deep into the wallowing aspect of the difficulties. And this form kind of requires you to really wallow and indulge this really unhelpful view. You have to list everything wrong with your life. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it really really kind of messed me up. I struggled physically because there was a lot of writing. I was doing my dissertation at the time. I was already struggling and it was a big form that I had to fill in. But more than that, the emotional and the stress side of it got to me the most. To list everything that's wrong with you, everything that's hard about your life is very difficult emotionally. To be forced into confront whatever trauma or emotional difficulties you have is really hard. I was doing my dissertation at the time and it set me back. I had to take 2 or 3 weeks off doing university work and I was just filling in this one form and I didn't feel good because the emotional difficulty of it is very high and it's kind of written in a way that you can't avoid that. I think to effectively and successfully fill out the form, you have to really commit to talking about everything that you struggle with, which makes it hard. So in terms of how you're going to do it, you're going to need help. I can't imagine people could do this on their own. With help, it is doable. With encouragement, support, someone else doing the writing, someone else helping you think through your thoughts and make them coherent, especially as it goes on and you get more and more incoherent and emotional. My mum helped me and I would have given up a million times had I not had that help. And I would say definitely try and find someone who can help you because it will make all the difference. Also, if you have the option to do it online, I probably would also suggest that because I was posted it and sent the paper copy. We couldn't make mistakes, which means we wrote out all of our answers on notebook paper and then everything had to be rewritten. It had to be done again just because it needed to be right. So I didn't want to just write whatever I thought directly on the paper. So I feel like it would be better if it was online and you could just type in the answers, or if you had them in a Word document, you could copy and paste them over so that you didn't have to rewrite everything like we did. That was a big difficulty as well. Also, I wrote it because I was afraid that they would take issue with me not writing it. I don't think that there's any requirement for you to write it yourself, but because I started writing it at the beginning, I was afraid. I don't know, I think I overthought it, to be honest, and therefore put myself into more work than I needed to do. But I wrote it all out, and it was very hard. Not only did I have to think of all these things, format them into proper written sentences, I then had to copy them all out again. So it was like just another time I had to go through these difficult feelings and situations just again and again and again. So after you've gone through this very difficult form, you send it away in the post. It's very old-fashioned and weird. They don't give you a time about how much it's going to take, but I think mine took around 15 weeks to process. And then I got a call from another woman who recapped, who recapped questions. She asked me things, I answered them again. So not only had it taken us ages and we'd worked really hard on the written answers, I'd already talked to someone at the beginning. So this is my third time answering these questions, and it was just exhausting. It was just exhausting and it was redundant, and it was, do they not know who it's for? Like, do they not know that it's for people who are already struggling, and then they're just gonna make us struggle more by making the system too difficult to do? People who need the support don't access it because it's too hard. And I think they're trying to avoid people who don't deserve it getting access by making the process difficult. But in fact, what they're doing is just alienating people who are struggling. And it's so unfair that you can't get the help you need without killing yourself to do it. So I did kill myself to do it. I had to take 3 weeks off my dissertation. I couldn't, I didn't have 3 weeks to take off my dissertation. My point is, it shouldn't be this hard and it's unfair, which I think we could say for a lot of things. Okay, so after the lady called me, asked me again the same questions, I got approved really quick. I've heard some really bad horror stories about the people who assess you, about them coming over to your house, straight up lying, you having to go see them using the fact that you went to see them as a reason that you don't need it or that you're not disabled. But The person I talked to on the phone was super lovely. I got the impression that she was very much on my side, and then when my approval came through super fast, I assumed she must have written a really good report. I obviously can't guarantee you'll get someone good, but I can say that I do think that there are good assessors, because I think I had one, you know? I think she was on my side. I think she cared about what I was saying and was taking it on board, and I got approved. If you don't get approved, you have to appeal, and I kind of thought I would, because ME is, you know, classically a kind of disrespected illness, but I didn't. Okay, so in terms of universal credit, you sign up if you aren't working or are working a low-paying job, and after you've signed up for the regular universal credit stuff, you have the option to sign up for what they refer to as reduced capacity for work. You have the option to be put into one of 3 categories: the regular category, the reduced capacity for work, and the limited capacity for work. I'm in limited. In the regular group, you have to go into the job centre every fortnight. You have to provide proof that you're looking for a job. They encourage you to go to skills sessions, and they are working with you to try and get you employed. So the point of the reduced and limited capacity groups is that you're not being bombarded with tasks that you're supposed to be doing when you're not well enough to do them. So on the one that I'm on, limited capacity for work, I don't have to go into the job centre, and I don't have to do interviews or apply for any jobs. I don't have to do any courses or practice any interviewing techniques. I don't have to do any of the stuff that proves I'm looking for work, because I don't need to be. Though if I want to, I'm allowed to, and that will not affect my status as limited capacity, which is why it's a limited capacity and they don't say no capacity, because I mean, it's the government. Ideally they'd love everyone to get a job. But the idea is that you aren't working under the same conditions that others are of you should be looking for work, because they understand that you can't look for work or have work. So that makes a huge difference. Also, with limited capacity for work, they give you a little bit extra, because universal credit is very low because they're trying to encourage you to get a job. So when they agree that you can't have a job, then they are happier to give you a bit of extra money, because they're not using the low money as like a kind of carrot and stick situation, where the stick is the not getting enough money from universal credit. Because they're not trying to convince you to do it anymore, you can have some more. That was incredibly helpful for me, because it meant I could actually pay my rent. I couldn't, before I got the disability stuff, I could just pay my rent and my bills. That was it. And then food would take all the rest of my money, and there would be no money for anything. When I got onto the limited capacity, I was given extra money and then was able to pay rent, live, etc. And then PIP came through, and that gave me more money, and now I can save some as well. So when you apply for the universal credit reduced capacity, you have to do another form. Though the form isn't as bad, it's shorter, but the questions are subtly different enough that you can't just like pick bits from what you've already written for PIP, so you have to do it all again. So it's not as bad, but it's just another thing. But that came through quite quickly for me. So then I was just on the increased money, which helped me live. So the difficulties of the whole application process for universal credit and for PIP are how difficult and long it is, and how emotionally and physically taxing it is. How redundant so many of the steps are. Combine multiple of these steps, and they could say that if you get PIP, then you're automatically allowed to have the reduced capacity for work. But no, they don't communicate. You just have to tell them all the same information. And also, one of the main things that you hear from other people, though I luckily did not experience it, is the assessors not believing people and not being on their side and just making it difficult. But it's not all bad. The good things are you can get money. The good things are that you can get the money you need to live your life. If you're able to work a job, PIP can give you a little bit extra. You don't have to worry about working, whether you can work, how much you can work, all of these things that have been playing on my mind for years. Will I ever be able to work? I don't know. It's a very stressful idea that I'm just never going to be able to work. I feel a little bit of relief knowing that I can live off the amount of money I'm getting now. With the universal credit, with the PIP, I can live off this. Ideally, I will be able to make my own money and not have to rely on universal credit, but it's a very handy service when you are not in the position to work. Do I wish it was easier? Yes. Do I thank my lucky stars it exists? Also yes. A good thing about it is that they last a while. Universal credit lasts a year before you have to reapply, and PIP, I believe when I got it through, I have until 2024 and the summer of 24 before I have to reapply. So it's not like you have to do this whole process every 6 months. Also, when you have PIP, you can access certain other perks, like I got a blue badge because I have PIP. I'm also looking into getting a rail card, which reduces the fees of train travel because I have PIP. And if you go to like the theatre or something, your carer or individual that goes with you can get a reduced price ticket. It's just one of those things that it has pros and cons. Should you get it? As someone who went through the whole process, really struggled with it, but is now out the other end, I would say yes. Once you've done it, it's worth it. It's worth it to have that security of the extra money. It's worth it to, you know, have access to a blue badge and that type of stuff. It's worth it. But I understand why people don't do it, because it was very difficult, especially if you don't have help. I would say if you're at university, you know, there's something going on in your life right now that's specifically tricky, I wouldn't apply for it now, if you see what I mean. I would wait until you have a bit of spare time before you do it, because it will take a lot out of you, and if you need your energy and your mental capabilities for something else, I wouldn't say it's a good time. It should be simpler, it should be easier, but it isn't, and unfortunately we have to work in the systems that we've got. It's a really hard decision, and I think it's one that everyone has to make for themselves, because it can be a very difficult process. And I didn't even have the most difficult process. I didn't have to appeal and do all of that kind of stuff. So I would say it's worth it if you think you have the capacity. I would say you should go for it, but obviously everyone's different and it's really hard. Let us know in the comments if you have PIP, how you found it, and if you have any other advice or thoughts about it for other people who maybe haven't tried it yet. Thank you so much for watching this video. Next week is my week off, but I will be back with another video the week after. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. There are other videos on the screen right now for you to go and watch. Bye!